Thank you very much, everybody, for coming to this session. We are very honored today to have various presenters with us representing the different stakeholders in this intersection of community, health, and performance. So without further ado, we'll begin our discussion. Actually, maybe let's just go around and share, just introduce ourselves and also briefly tell us about the kinds of things that you do.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. Thank you to the organizers for having me here. I'm Patrick from NAC. So, just a little bit about the National Arts Council. We are a statutory board under the Ministry of Culture, Community and Youth, and we champion the arts. We oversee the development of the arts here in Singapore, and we champion the arts through two ways. The first is in developing, or rather in nurturing, creative and artistic excellence, and the second is in ensuring broad-based engagement with the arts. Just a little bit about myself. I've been with the arts sector for over 10 years, and my background is in cultural policy, so I'm actually here to contribute the boring stuff. I'll leave it to the rest to contribute more of the interesting bits. I have had the opportunity to develop the arts plan since back in 2018, the first arts plan, and right now I am contributing to the development of the second arts plan, which is a 5-year blueprint for the arts sector over the next 5 years. Just to self-koyo a little bit, over the last year, we have engaged over 1,300 people. And through these engagements, we have distilled 3 key pillars in connected society, which is about harnessing the value of the arts in bringing communities together. The second is in distinctive city, which is to harness again the value of the arts in making Singapore a more inspiring and iconic city. The third is in a creative economy, which is about how the arts can better contribute to the larger creative economy. So, we are still in the process of developing this plan. We are seeking feedback actually for the plan, and if you have not already done so, I would encourage you to go into our microsite and to offer your views and feedback, because it will go a long way in helping us to finalize and formalize this plan. Apart from contributing to developing the arts plan, I am also with the team, the Engagement and Participation Division, where we look at broad-based engagement, social participation, as well as access in the arts. And as mentioned earlier, I am privileged to be able to lead a team of very passionate individuals who oversee a couple of portfolios, so arts and disability, arts in the social sector, arts volunteerism, youth engagement, as well as placemaking. So, that's just me in a nutshell, and I'm very happy to be part of this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patrick. First of all, thank you so much for the invitation. Really happy to be here, such a conducive environment this morning. So I'm Vivien from Alice Lee Center for Nursing Studies. I'm a nurse researcher. So basically my passion is really on the care of older adults. So over the years, I've been working on healthy aging program, really to promote the health and well-being of our local older population. So through the years, we have been working on interventions like exercise program or cognitive training to enhance the physical well-being and also the cognitive well-being of older adults, because we know that towards the aging stage, we are all facing cognitive and physical decline. So we are doing a program evaluation to hope to find out an intervention which is really effective to promote the well-being. So by doing exercise or cognitive training, we always feel that something could be better to integrate the two together. So while in the process of doing our systematic review and meta-analysis, we realized that dance which actually really stand out. So it's actually an integration of physical and the cognitive well-being. So in a way that dance is functioning as an aerobic exercise, it can has a physical impact through the dance movement, and at the same time it brings the elements of music, enjoyment. So it actually promote the the emotional aspect, allow the expression of feelings, especially older adults. They could be in an isolated environment, living alone, right? And at the same time, throughout the movement, they need to recall a series of dance movements, dance steps, right? So that actually facilitate their memory, the cognitive aspect. So really, we feel so excited that, let's give it a try. Yeah, so we actually developed together with Center for Arts. I'm sure you heard about NUS Dance Synergy group, which is really a fantastic group of our dance students. Yeah, and also together with our community sectors, Lion Befrienders. So we work together to craft a community dance program and implement it over the past 2 years. Yeah, and we did a scientific evaluation on the program, and it is really amazing that the figures actually show that there's improvement on physical, cognitive, and psychosocial well-being of the older adults. Though it is a pilot study, but it actually gives us the confidence and encouragement that we can go on further. Yeah, I guess that's why I'm here. Yeah, to be part of the panel to share with you that how dance could bring an impact, not just so exclusively to the professional body, but to the public, to benefit even our older adults as well. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Edwin. I'm very cold. Okay, anyway, I think I'm a dancer. I'm still trying to be, but I co-founded a contemporary dance company, and with Decadance Co. And I think one of our main mission is to really loosen the perspective of what contemporary arts and contemporary dance is for the general public in Singapore. And that's why we wanted to make our work more accessible and think about different ways of retaining our aesthetics, our artistic integrity, while creating more access pathways for different people from different walks of life to access and be aware and be educated about what contemporary dance could be. And that's where we go into the work that we do with the seniors. We have this program called Deca Silver, and I think based off my gut feel, since working with seniors since 2009, I think a lot of times what I get from the ground is that these people are mainly lonely. A lot of times they are either by themselves or they have problems with their family, which most of them don't really talk out about. Yeah, and so I think dance, all dance personalities, we come in and we don't try and do therapy, and so we go in and we really, I think the main focus is to bond with the seniors and really just lift their moods. And I think just want to be very, very just work on that. Just work on that. Whether they can dance, they cannot dance, whether they got stroke or not. I think a lot of times it's that just kind of encouraging them to try something new, and really just to shake the idea of what dance is, because a lot of them will say, I'm too old, I have 2 left feet, worse 4 left feet. So it's really just getting them to be comfortable in a social setting, and for them to always look forward to the next session.
Hi, I'm Hasyimah Harith. I think it's also good for me to also share that a lot of my curiosities actually started from my own body. I think at the age when I reached 30, I started to be curious a lot about like how is it that the Malay dancer is always forever young? And then as a 30-year-old woman, what is the narrative, or what kind of spaces or choreographies are there to then assert a sense of being, or to be honest, to just see myself reflected in the Malay dance world. But that curiosity also led me to ask a lot of questions, to also actually really kind of consider my own methodology in approaching Malay dance, the teaching of it, the performing of it, the preparing of it. I think that part, the nurturing of the dance itself, stems a lot from the ways of us living today and also probably for the future. I have two curiosities that guides my questioning of my artistic practice today. The first one is, in these times of crisis, what are the ways to reclaim our frames of being? And the second one is, can we consider how performance or even the moving of the body as a rehabilitative place for people of different age, gender?
Thank you very much to the organizers for having me. My name is Charmaine. I'm from the Agency for Integrated Care, so I guess sort of like the pseudo other government person here. So the Agency for Integrated Care works primarily with the elder care settings. We are under the Ministry of Health. And so this department that I work with has also started sort of interrogating the space of where arts and health can actually intersect and what sort of well-being purposes can come out of that. I'm really excited because from all the conversations that I've had even prior to this, and also for some of the relationships that I've had with the folks here, it's been a very fruitful journey already, so I'm really excited about the outcomes of this discussion today. I think for AIC, we're primarily looking at the space of where different sorts of activity interventions can help in terms of the well-being of seniors. And we're looking at it not only from a physical aspect. I think for a lot of us, we know that health often looks at physical interventions, but we're looking at it from a cognitive as well as a psychosocial standpoint. When we started this work in 2014, alongside Edwin actually, this was our first sort of foray into the arts with the National Arts Council. So almost 10 years now, there was very little interventions related to the arts led from a professional standpoint in the healthcare sector. And we wanted to understand what benefits inherently would come from professional interventions from trained artists, as well as the possibilities of introducing the arts to the healthcare sector via training for healthcare staff. And it was a bit contentious, I have to say, when we first started, because I think there was a lot of notions of, do you think that a healthcare staff can replace an artist? And I don't think that was actually the point, although it's a good point to bring up. I think the intention was that when we first started, there were very few community artists who had a interest, sort of understanding of the sector. And we recognized that with the aging population, there would be a need. So then I think it was really about heightening arts appreciation in the healthcare settings and understanding that everyone has a role. And what is the role, for example, of a healthcare staff as a co-facilitator? And I think the other piece that we also recognized quite early is that caregiving in itself has significant burdens. There's a lot of satisfaction along with it. But I think it can sometimes be a double-edged sword. So then the question was, whilst we were trying to serve the more frail seniors, in the process of also getting healthcare staff involved, would there be a benefit in terms of their well-being as well? So it becomes a multi-pronged sort of intervention that not only assists the care recipient, but also the caregiver, whether it be a professional caregiver or even someone who is home-based. So our team started this work in 2014. In 2020, just prior to the pandemic, we started to also expand our work to look beyond frail seniors, to also look at the ones that are a bit less frail, the pre-frail in the community. So I think right now what we're interrogating is all the things that we've done with the frail seniors, what is possible in terms of adapting it to the pre-frail community, what is existent in the pre-frail community that we can bring in to the frail space as well, thereby just sort of looking at the possibilities of access to the arts to a very wide range of audiences, understanding that there are inherent therapeutic values to actually participating in the arts. And how do we mine that the best way, given the finite resources that we have? Yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you very much for all of your introduction. And I think, so today we are here to talk about this intersection, which is very complex between community, performance, and health. And of course, on our panel, we have people representing the policymakers. We also have researchers as well as artists working on the ground with the communities. So from what I heard just now, we are here to talk about this particular intersection. Of course, we will also be approaching differently depending on where we are in terms of positioning. Some of us are concerned about the health or wellness of artists. Some of us are concerned about the health and wellness of the community, and also the health and wellness of healthcare professionals. So there's actually a lot of things going on here. So perhaps I will start our conversation by asking Mr. Patrick the first question. So speaking from the perspective of a policymaker, could you please share with us more about the white paper on Healthier Singapore? Where do you think the arts can come in the broader view of things?
Thank you, Prof. Liang. Actually, I'm not the best person to speak on the Healthier SG white paper. I think my colleagues from the health sector will be better placed. But perhaps maybe I'll start by offering some context as to why we think it's important. So from a cultural policy perspective, right, when we are trying to make more inroads into other sectors outside of the arts, it is often quite important to find ways to capitalize or leverage on larger policy shifts. So what I mean by that is that, if you look at the current policy environment, the health sector actually provides such an opportunity. So some of you may be quite aware of the Healthier SG white paper, which was published in September last year. And in the Healthier SG white paper, what it does is that it maps out a plan for a very major transformation of Singapore's healthcare system, shifting the healthcare's focus from reactive care to preventive health, right? And as part of that, there's one of 5 key things that were highlighted, one of which is this idea of activating community partners to support residents in leading healthy lifestyles or healthier lifestyles. And within that, social prescription, this concept was introduced. It is not a new concept. It is something that has been established internationally. And within that, basically what is social prescription? It is essentially a referral program whereby what happens is doctors, qualified healthcare workers can then refer individuals to sports activities, community-based activities, and in many instances, internationally, arts activities, which play a very central and core part of social prescribing. So why I'm raising this is because, the government is going to pilot this with sports, obviously, as well as community-based programs. But actually, the arts sector, we have an opportunity to also go and embed ourselves in this. Because, all of you would agree with me that the arts have a role to play, right? And the arts can help improve people's well-being and health. And the work that has been done by my colleagues, fellow panelists over here. If you look at the population survey on the arts, about 80% of people in Singapore recognize that the arts can improve quality of life as well as well-being. So there is a chance here. We have a lot of international and some local research. I've also heard that ERA is working on some research on the impact of the arts on health. So we have all this going on, and we are going in that right direction. With social prescription being piloted, I would say that it's about how can the Malay dance community also look into how can we get on board this and be ready when the time comes. And for me, I will highlight 4 key areas actually that we as an arts sector could think about. Right? The first would be research. Not just any kinds of research, but evidence-based, clinical-based research. The health sector is a highly regulated sector, and so it should be. I'll be very worried if it's not, right? So, but for the arts to enter that space, we need to, in a way, demonstrate that the arts is efficacious. It can help to improve one's well-being, and we can do that through research. The second point I'll make is advocacy. With the research that we have, we then need to go and work with partners like MOH, AIC, to, in a way, lobby and advocate, promote the arts, because the arts can and should be included. The third would be, I would add, it would be programs. To enter social prescribing, we need the programs. Without the programs, and I'm not saying that we need to develop new programs. There's been so many wonderful programs done by the art sector, that we should aggregate. How can we scale them? How can we improve them? And then complement it with developing new ones. And last but not least, I would say distribution points, because in terms of the social prescribing referral program, these programs will kind of be distributed across Singapore through community distribution points. So we need to, work with them, partner them, start engaging them at an early stage. Say, hey, I know Sport SG, you have sports programs for social prescribing. Can we also embed the arts into your spaces? Yeah. So I'll conclude that. Yeah. With that.
Thank you. So right now we know that the government is kind of focusing on sports, and perhaps there's a chance for us who are interested in dance, in performance. So maybe now we'll turn our attention to Mr. Edwin and Ms. Hasyimah to talk about your experience of working on the ground with the communities. What are some of the challenges you have encountered? And then perhaps how do you overcome it? And I think from our previous conversations, we kind of raised several points. So one was about general understanding and perception of what dance is. Next one was, the other one was the expectation of the caregivers and the care centers. And then we also talked about the economics of engaging community through dance. So perhaps you could elaborate on that.
Well, I think one of the more prominent challenges that I face constantly when I'm meeting new community partners is that they're unwilling to let go of the reliance on volunteerism to then invest and go into maybe more long-term projects and more serious programs with artists. And a lot of times they want a very big footprint in the program that you do. They're not very few people who has the power to make decisions will say, okay, you're gonna just go do this, and I believe the program will be beneficial and whatever. A lot of them would also come in and say, okay, I'm going to shape the program. And we struggle a lot because, maybe it's not going towards the same direction. Communicating in an artistic outcome with someone who has probably never done arts before could be, very, very confusing. And I think that negotiation becomes, that it is challenging. I mean, it's good that it's happening. It's good that somebody actually wants to talk to me, but it's challenging because I think we need to kind of align so that we don't confuse the seniors as well. So that's one thing. The other thing is definitely resources. There's a lot of work to get to very little resources, and then therefore there's a lot of I feel like there's always a shortage of manpower in these settings, on these care centers. Nobody wants to do the extra work. Nobody wants to jump through hoops. Nobody wants to be, collecting data overnight to report to their higher ups. And so I think there's a lot of this reluctant mentality towards going the extra mile for something that they're already comfortable with. Their seniors are not falling. The seniors are not complaining. Everybody's well fed. Cukup, Then with the recent, everybody needs to convert to what do you call it, an active aging hub, right? So then everybody's like, we have the same space, we have the same resources, but then, you know, I need to, from 200 seniors now, I need to reach out to 1,008 seniors. Then what happens? So now everybody's like, okay, now we need to share the pie, and the pie is already so small, and then people are complaining left, right, center, there's not enough to go around, but then the whole push is that let's become an active aging hub. If not, we'll lose our license, we'll lose this, we'll lose that. Yeah, so then when there is this tightness in terms of resources, then budget shift back to, you know, away from the arts again lah. So I guess that's one of the things. Hasyimah?
I just want to situate myself in this context. So for Prisma, Haizat and myself, we work with Montfort Care at Good Life Bedok for a work, Both Sides Now, which was commissioned by Drama Box and Arts Walk Collaborative. This was last year in September. We were invited into the process for Both Sides Now, where primarily the idea is about thinking about living well and also living the world well, and really engaging with the Malay Muslim community. It's quite problematic to consider who are the commissioned people and who are the artists working with the community, but I think it was also necessary for Heng Luan and also the AD at that time, to also express how it's a long-term project with different groups or communities. So not only just the Malay Muslim community. It was also necessary for them to engage Malay Muslim artists as part of the collaboration, so that we are also aware of the community context and also urges and resistance. So within that project, I think when we first came to it, I think the caregiver or the liaison officer, but I think she prefers to be called a caregiver, Miss Masni. She was very sweet. It was a Zoom. We were chatting. She wanted lesson plans. She wanted to know what exactly they were doing. And then me and Haizat, we just sat there and we sort of just looked at her and said, we actually need to know the elders better. We're not really kind of prescribing a certain way of thinking or doing or making. But prior to this, we've actually worked with MKAC, Muslim Kidney Action Association elders in our previous works, or spending time with them weekly to kind of really just really work on mobility and I think also relationships building. But I think the first thing that really struck us was the insistence of a paper plan. Yeah, a way that we ourselves were looking at a Google Doc and like, what should we write? Quite candidly. And it was really to the point where we were also questioning our position. Like, we have a theme, we are coming in to talk about grief and death with a group of elders. We're not trained in I guess psychology, we're not trained in physiotherapy, we're not trained in therapy, we're very good with our bodily facilities. I think we are nice people lah, but I don't think that gives us I guess we did feel really not quite ready for this role, but it was really something that we kind of also were very honest about and vulnerable from the very beginning. So when we worked with Montfort and worked with Masni, plus Heng Luan and also the different caregivers, we really asked for help. Like, we needed someone to be in as emotional support, right? So does Montfort Care have that? Can we have that person in the room? We also have someone who is aware of their physical mobility. So we need that person to be with us in the room. So we kind of have a request list, but we haven't submitted the lesson plan. But we kind of already asked, like, okay, we need this, we need that, and we need this. And I think that was really quite something that we were not able to do if Montfort Care were not open to it. You know, I think there was a lot of negotiation even before we stepped into the room with the elders. At the back end, we got to like really kind of like share what is the plan and how do do we kind of bring this about? So that's one. So I think, firstly, are the artists, I think from my perspective as an artist, are we ready to have that negotiation? Are we ready to also be able to not be so precious about the product? Can we be more process-oriented, in which we are also designing the performance from the perspective of the bodies in the space? I think that's something that the artist has the agency to decide, which needs to also be communicated. And then afterwards is, of course, communicating. So communication is, of course, multi-layered. Me being a Malay woman in the room was always very comforting, because the elders that I work with are primarily Malay Muslim women. So the nest was already there. You know, Haizat would feel very excluded sometimes. Yeah, so he will sometimes, kind of exit. But I think it was also necessary to also understand that it's not really a gender thing, but it's more about like what kind of issues that we were sharing. So a lot of our activities were centered towards themes and conversations. And that is something that I think we kind of always have sessions with the elders, primarily starting from their experiences. And to be honest, when we had the project, we were only commissioned for 3 months of fee to work with the elders. But we actually started way much earlier. We started about probably 7-8 months, because we're only talking about once a week, yeah? I mean, you make it sound like it's really long, but it's really just 3 hours in a week. So I think time is very relative to everybody, and in Singapore, time is money. So I'm still quite curious on how it's like, and how is the budgeting like with the health sector, and also with artists coming on board, and the social prescription invitation, because I think there's also another way of, I think that's probably one of the resistance of artists to kind of go into this, because it is a lot. There is no exit strategy. When you work with elders, children, if you don't come, they will find you. And there is a sense of responsibility that goes beyond performance. It's really, for me, it's like they enter my bloodstream, to be quite visceral, yeah? And they become a part of my language, my culture, my worldview. So I think that's something that I feel like should be kind of taken into account. It's not just the professional practice of dancing and moving, but also to kind of also consider how possibly there can be a little bit of a space where artists can try. So it's not a kind of like immediately they go on a project and then they can't work it out, and then it becomes like almost a death sentence. But there is a space for them to test whether they have that motivation to kind of work it out. I'm just thinking that could possibly be one strategy.
Thank you for sharing. So what I heard just now, so some of the challenges, actually think about it, most of the challenges that we kind of talked about just now have to do with sustainability. How can we sustain our engagement with the community through our craft? So for example, Mr. Edwin mentioned arts volunteerism. So the idea that, maybe there's the expectation that artists kind of volunteer rather than getting paid. And of course, that's going to have an impact on how much the artists can commit in terms of time, in terms of resources, and also that's going to have an impact on the quality of engagement. And then there's also, I think, that I think both of you have touched on upon the idea of agency of the artists. So when artists go into a collaboration with certain, like for example, care centers, so what kind of relationship is that? Is it kind of more collaborative, or is it kind of more like I hire you to work, and therefore here are the instructions and you follow? But I think, as artists, artists tend to be people who are creative, who want to think outside the box. And so is there room for such creativity? And also, just mentioned, just to sum up, and also the resistance from the community. So actually doing community work involves a lot of things. So there's the craft side of things, and then there's the crowd side of things. So the crowd has to do, how do I overcome resistance from the communities? How do I educate people that, you do have to pay the artists in order to make art sustainable? And I quite like what Ms. Hasyimah mentioned, the idea of entrance and exit. Often when we engage in community work, it's not about, okay, we'll start the project on this date and we'll finish this date, because it's actually a lifelong commitment, I have to say. So how do we actually enter into the community? Like, how do we start the project? How do we build trust with the community? And then how do we sustain the work? And then, so when the project is finished, so-called finished, then how do we exit? So that, we don't just suddenly disappear or abruptly just finish the project. So I think these are some very practical, pertinent issues that young practitioners will certainly encounter in their practice. So perhaps I will turn to, again, to Mr. Patrick and also Ms. Charmaine to speak more about the kind of institutional and resources that are available out there to facilitate community engagement.
Maybe I'll start with the obvious, because the NEC, we are a grant funding body and we give grants or funding to the community, to the art sector. So we do have a series of grants that support community engagement projects. I mean, not just projects that artists would do to perform, to create, and to present, but also it also allows artists to create community-based work. For example, presentation and participation grants have supported artists in engaging with the visually impaired community, have also supported companies to work with communities like in Teluk Blangah, Toa Payoh. So there are those opportunities there in terms of funding. When there is also this other funding that we provide in partnership with the People's Association, which is called the We Care Arts Fund. And that's primarily for the social sector, whereby social service agencies can apply through their CDCs to create programs, or rather to work with artists and arts companies to create programs for their beneficiaries. So very specific communities. This could be for children, youth at risk, seniors, the whole gamut of beneficiaries, essentially. And of course, if capacity building is still a necessary thing, because it's complex, right, to engage the community. If there are certain competencies that needs to be addressed, whether as an artist or people within arts organizations, there is then the capability development grant, which the NAC offers to help people, to help the community develop capabilities. There is also, at the NEC, we also co-fund through partnerships. So if I may cite an example, we have 21 arts and culture nodes all across Singapore. And these arts and culture nodes are essentially partnerships with public agencies. They may be National Library, they may be pseudo-public agencies like SAFRA, but these are arts and culture nodes all across Singapore. And through a co-funding model, we actually co-fund programs for their respective communities. So what the nodes do is they actually work with artists and arts companies to develop programs. It could be for specific communities, it could be for more broad-based engagement. They can tap on, we support our nodes to develop these programs for their communities. Apart from funding, I think a lot of the work that we do at the NEC is in advocacy and promotion. So we do a lot of advocating, lobbying and pestering the other agencies, and to tell them, hey, look at the arts. The arts can be a part of what you do. We do a lot of that. and the background, meeting other agencies, whether they are public, we even meet private sectors, getting them to support the arts. So that's one avenue. The other aspect of advocacy is this idea of sharing best practices, which we do through several of our platforms. So more specifically, community-based ones would include Let's Connect, the Arts and Aging Forum, Arts and Disability Forum, which by the way is happening this week. Of course, we are co-organizing it with Art This Singapore. So if you're free, please feel free to drop by. But these platforms, they are important because they bring together not just the arts community, but the social, the health, and people who are interested in this space. And annually, we see people connecting, forging collaborations even sometimes. And these are very valuable platforms in helping us to put that message across. Apart from advocacy, so these platforms also help facilitate networking, as I mentioned. Apart from that, we also continuously create self-help resources. So if you may be familiar, we do have toolkits and guides that are available on the NAC website. Just to cite a few, for example, we have one that's called the Impacting Communities Through the Arts, which are 2 editions of a compilation of arts engagement projects in Singapore. And these, at least from speaking to some artists, have found it useful because just taking reference from how they do things, what has been done, how they engage with the communities have been quite useful for them. And the other toolkit that we have published is called the Guide to Impacting Communities Through the Arts, which is essentially a toolkit which offers tips and considerations for approaching community arts initiatives. And maybe the last one to highlight is actually a evaluation kit that we did together, we published together with Professor Trivik of the Architecture Department, where it's about assessing the impact of community arts initiatives. So it's really a step-by-step way of how can one evaluate their community arts initiative. The last point I'll probably make is that, all the things that I've mentioned to you quite confusing, right, sometimes. So it's really about connecting with us, talk to it. I know arts groups and artists will have account managers, talk to them. Build that relationship because we are always keen to build that relationship. And then, talk to us, share with us your plans, and then we can, in a way, give advice on which other areas we can come in to support, so on and so forth. So I would say, again, going back to the point about communication, not just communication. I mean, communication, yes, is important with the other sectors, but also communication within the sector.
Thanks very much, Patrick. Yeah. I think to contextualize my response, I'll be sharing a little bit about what's known as the AIC Wellness Program. So quite fortuitously, actually, Arts Council really were our first partners when this started in 2014. And it was, we were sort of interrogating the role of the arts in health, largely because maybe just to share a little bit about my background, I was trained in the arts and I joined the health sector about 10, 15 years ago. And so I had seen the arts and its impact from a psychosocial standpoint prior to me joining health. And I think that therefore there was always that interest. And as we were looking at enlarging the range of activities that our frail seniors, for example, the nursing homes could participate in, we really wanted to go beyond the seated exercises and bingo, although I have to say it's much, much enjoyed, right? As well as karaoke now that everyone can finally sing again. But I think we wanted to also say that, seniors have a wide range of activities that they have interest in or maybe have not had prior exposure to. And, it's still a time of learning, and why not bring in the arts? I think we also wanted the idea of the fact that the arts had a lot of space for people to create. And so there was this feeling of neutrality to almost positivity, because you know how it is with seniors. Sometimes, especially when they're frail, they often are told what they cannot do, and there can also be a little bit more of a sort of slightly more regimented sort of living, right? What's right, what's wrong and all that. But we saw the arts as a space for a lot of positive, life-giving messages that could come out of it. So when we started working with the Arts Council on the AIC Wellness Program, one of the first activities we did, where we worked with Edwin as well, was this program called Everyday Waltzes for Active Aging. with the Arts Vision Company. It was really our first foray with a professional dance company. We thought that, and it was true, that working with a dance company would professionalize, the arts coming into the healthcare sector, giving it sort of the clout and credibility that it truly deserved. In terms of the approach, maybe I troubled the organizers to chuck up on the screen a slide on the AIC Wellness Program. What we did was we actually worked very closely with the dance company to pilot it in a nursing home. And then we went through the process because we understood also that health had a lot of learning that needed to be done with the arts. And I think vice versa. Because I think more often than not, we want to get to the same end point, but we have different ways of articulating it. And therefore, sometimes it seems as though we're talking about different things, when actually what we're using is just different vocabularies. I think, therefore, AIC sees ourselves in this space with regard to the AIC Wellness Program as intermediaries, where we sit in the intersection of the arts and health. And we play the big kepos, right? We say, when they say this, actually they mean this. And we facilitate a lot of these conversations because we find that in so doing, it heightens the awareness and appreciation of both sides. So I think in terms of institutions, like for example, AIC, we do see our role as intermediaries trying to be bridge builders to bring things in. So we piloted, we had a lot of learnings, we got input from the healthcare staff, but also the artists. We re-looked at what we were doing. We struggled with the artists struggled with us. And then we laid down a curriculum. Okay, but I think this is where it is that actually sometimes there's this curriculum is not necessarily a bad word. It's actually, and I think also people often think that sometimes, and it's unfair to the artists, that artists have no plan. Actually, it's just, the plan just looks different. One sometimes calls it a curriculum or a lesson plan, but sometimes an artist looks at it differently, but there's certainly a method to it all. The question is, can we get a better understanding of what that method looks like? And when we bring in two different entities, can we agree on a common landing point? And there's a lot of talk, right, that needs to come around that. It takes a significant amount of time. So I think this is where it is that AIC, through the wellness program, we've been very privileged to have the space to be able to do this. So after we did the pilot, worked with the artists, got feedback, we even ran evaluations for a proof of concept. We triangulated this data with international studies so that you get to a point of an evidence-based approach, even though we had a very small sample. I think there was a lot of effort to try and mirror certain things that would be acceptable from a healthcare perspective, but yet not be onerous from the artists to the point that they would feel that every single thing had to be evidence-based, that kind of thing. And actually, the reality is not everything that we do in our lives are evidence-based. Sometimes we just do it because we are interested. Sometimes it's a little bit frivolous, but it makes us happy. And, I think that's okay too. So I think there's all these sort of common understandings that needs to come into this space where actually institutions like AIC for the past 10 years or so, we've been able to sort of sit as bridge builders in this space. So after the evaluation, we went on then to have a set curriculum. We invited the artists back in, and they provided the training, and it's been going on. We even developed a version 2 with the dance company, and we've been training in the healthcare sector primarily in community care, which looks after seniors that are a bit more frail, for the past 9 years, which I think is something that is, we often talk about the issues of sustainability, right? But I think the fact that we were able to sustain this partnership for 9 years and counting actually does sort of demonstrate the fact that it is possible to do these things, but it does require a lot of work around thinking about how we communicate and advocate for each other. And I think I wanted to just, say a couple other things that potentially might be useful, which I think we're also in conversations with the Arts Council about, which is really about sort of more specific training for the artists and also for healthcare staff in terms of the appreciation of where arts and health can actually meet and complement each other. So I think some of the areas that we were looking at and exploring is, all these challenges on the ground that artists have been telling us, it's not new. We've heard this for forever, right? But the question is, what can we do about it now? And, is there training around that? I mean, what do we need to do? Are there sort of common strategies around these kinds of things, right? How do we heighten awareness from the art sector as well as the health sector on the value of each, entity coming into that space? The value of facilitation, what is co-creation in community arts? What is that presence of the artist in terms of mark making? How do you need to negotiate that? This whole process versus outcome, the aesthetic. Is there always a need for a performance? Is there always a need for a concert as an outcome for a health site? You know what I mean? Yeah. So there's all these things that, have become sort of like what is taken as common understanding of practice, but is that really common? Is that really what it should be? After we've been doing this for so long, can we potentially pitch a different narrative? I think that's where that kind of conversation is. And I think issues of self-care and the ethical exit as well are things that we really need to talk about, because artists, healthcare staff, the seniors themselves, everyone is invested in that process. So how can we meaningfully make conversations matter, but then how can we also be enriched from the process and then also leave better, wiser, and not necessarily tarnished from the experience? And I find that that's something that, I think a lot more needs to be talked about, because actually the truth is, if we really understand the value of the arts in health, then we know that actually this is a very important discussion to be had.
Thank you very much for sharing, Ms. Charmaine and also Mr. Patrick. So just maybe to sum up, so some of the points that we talked about is about don't feel you're alone working on the ground. There are a lot of people that you can talk to communicate with. There are resources available, but it's just a matter of knowing how to access the resources. So communication is important, and just don't feel that you are alone by yourself. So perhaps now we'll turn to Dr. Vivien to talk about, from your perspective as a researcher, what are some of the contributions that you think that researchers can actually give in this larger picture of things?
Sure, yeah. I have a couple of slides to share. So we actually, as mentioned just now, we actually developed this community dance program, right? So throughout the sharing earlier on, I can fully appreciate Edwin and Hasyimah's perspective. It is very challenging to make the first step, to make the breakthrough into the community. So when I first approached the community regarding the dance program, so the response was like, why dance? Why not just exercise? Exercise works fine for the elderly. And then why not just Zumba? Zumba, we have done Zumba before and the elderly love Zumba. So there was a lot of concern from the community sectors about dance. Is it suitable for elderly? Will we get the buy-in from the elderly for dance to participate in dance? So it really took us a lot of effort and time to kind of convince them, there is a part to play and that there is a positive impact of dance on the elderly. And of course, as mentioned by Prof. Liang earlier, that the building trust, building rapport with the community is important. So prior to for us to embark on the dance program, I've been working with the community for about 2 years on our e-health project with the community. So from there, we sort of already built up the trust, the rapport. So it's easier for us to move on to a second project. We have done a systematic review and the meta-analysis just to find out, what dance can what are the possible effects of dance on the health of older adults. So the evidence actually showed strongly that dance as kind of a series of movement, a dance movement that they need to remember, right? So in a way, it enhances their memory, attention, it promotes the visual spatial domain of the cognition, and also in terms of processing speed, because they need to execute the dance steps, right? So in a way, it really built on the cognition aspect. And dance usually is delivered through a group activity, so it promotes the social interaction, the social connection. And dance is aerobic exercise. So in a way, it actually promotes the physical strength balancing. And throughout the dance program, we encourage the older adults to share their feelings. So in a way, you promote better mood, happiness. Yeah, and we all know that dance is actually a non-pharmacological intervention. So it is less costly and easy to implement as long as we try. Yeah, so we actually published this paper on the top 1 nursing journal. In the discipline of nursing. So it is very exciting because dancing being a non-traditional intervention, which can attract the attention in the professional nursing community. Yeah, so we are comfortable and confident that there is a room to play for using dance as an intervention on the well-being of older adults. Yeah, so that actually gives us the foundation. So we also, share with the community with this the results, the finding from the research to kind of convince them to come on board. So for the community dance program, right, we actually work together with NUS Center for Arts and the community sector. So we engaged a chief dance instructor together with a group of student dance instructors. So I've been working on the crafting of the program together with the committee for about half a year. And very interesting, some of the things that you all mentioned earlier on really had happened during the regular meetings. For example, I think the artists would have a different mindset in terms of the curriculum, lesson plan. So to us as academics, it's like, I need more details over the lesson plan, whereas the community sectors will look more into the safety aspects of the elderly. So they concern a lot that, is this movement safe? Will my elderly fall or not? Yeah. And then for the dance instructors, they perhaps they have not been engaged working with elderly before, so they are not sure in a way that how is the profile of the seniors. Yeah. Can they do standing kind of dance movement, or they are just comfortable sitting on the chair, or can they move around? So there were a lot of concerns from each party. So in a way, it is good for us to have regular meetings, so everybody contributed from their own perspective. So that's how we really feel that the program has been customized for this group of seniors, and it is grounded. Yeah. So we actually crafted an 8-week weekly session. Each week we conduct one session, and it's about 1 hour session. The chief dance instructors actually trained the group of students, and the student instructors actually delivered the dance program to about 4 senior activity centers spread across the west, east, and the north area, of the island. So you can see the atmosphere is really enjoyable for the seniors. And then we really start with the basic kind of dance movement, sitting on the chair, until they are more confident. Then we get them to stand up and do the movements. Yeah. So it's basically a contemporary kind of dance movement, and integrated with certain themes like nature, traveling around the world, to engage the seniors into kind of guided imaginary for them to enjoy the movement. So it comes with meaning, the steps. So we actually did both quantitative and qualitative evaluation of the program. Yeah. So we initiated physiological measurement, for example, to evaluate their blood pressure, heart rate, and certain cardiovascular functions. Yeah, we actually use MOCA to evaluate the cognitive function of the elderly and the processing speed as well. Physical tests, we use short physical performance battery, basically to evaluate their gait, walking speed, balancing. Yeah, so that actually evaluate the physical function. And we actually use the MOXIE device, which can be tied over their the muscle area to evaluate the muscle oxygen usage. And lastly, we collected the saliva sample, and that is to evaluate the biological age. So for example, we can compare with their chronological age. So if let's say, their chronological age is 70 and the biological age shows 65. So in a way, physiologically, they are still functioning younger compared to their chronological age. So just a very quick summary. So we managed to recruit about 27 in each intervention and control group. And you could see that the mean age is all above 70. And they are all living in the community setting. So they are many all at pre-field stage. Yeah, so they are functioning well, independent. Yeah, and actually majority of them are female actually. Yeah, so we have a good spread over the ethnicity group. And one concerning matter is more about the comorbidity. So you can see that majority of them actually having at least one, if not more than two kind of comorbidity. So mostly are chronic illness like hypertension, hyperlipidemia, or diabetes, and so on and so forth. Yeah. I know we have very limited time here, so I summarize all the quantitative results into just one page. So in a nutshell, the results actually, the statistical results actually show us that, we have increased trend of SPPP, so that's a good reflection on their physical functioning. Yeah, and also in terms of hand grip power, yeah, increased trend towards the MOCA, which is a reflection of their cognitive capability. Yeah, and also in terms of the subjective happiness, so they are happy about the program. And also there's a significant improve in the quality of life. Patrick mentioned about, arts can play a part, right, to improve the quality of life for the older adults. And also there's a significant improve in terms of the intergenerational communication. So it is exciting to bring the student instructors. So, there's lots of communication and interaction happening between the two generations. So we have also conducted the focus group discussion to explore their experiences after the dance program. There's 3 teams actually emerging out. So I just pick up some of the quotes to share with you. So, some of the elderly feel that, they really enjoy the program. They feel that they are traveling around the world, because I can't travel for the past 3 years due to COVID. So now at least it gives me a sense that, I can move around. They also feel that, it's kind of reminiscence for them to help them to recall those good old days, right? I feel I'm young again. I can move all my legs. Dance also help them to enhance their memory, because they have to recall a series of dance steps. Some of the older adults are really committed. So besides the 1-hour session every week, they will go home and keep practicing the dance steps just to make sure that, they can recall and they can perform on the following week. It actually promote their physical functioning. So some of them feel that, I know I'm losing weight. In actual fact, they lose weight too. And I feel lighter and my body get more flexible. And some of them share that I used to have knee pain, but now I feel, the level of pain actually is more bearable. Yeah. And in a way, it actually promote the social interaction. They appreciate the fact that, the students coming to them every week and teach them dance. And they acknowledge that there is a generation gap, but in a way, it actually narrow down the gap and let them understand each other better. Yeah. And in a way, they share that, it helped them to relax, enhance their mood. They feel happier. And in the interview, some of the older adults even ask us, when are you coming back again? Yeah, and I want the program to be longer. 8 weeks is too short. Can you have a longer session? I really enjoy the program. this is the preliminary findings, and we actually published the qualitative part in a book chapter. Yeah, so still working on the paper for the quantitative part. Yeah, so of course, as academics, we do publication, but I think the ultimate aim is to raise public awareness that dance is not so exclusive for professional body. It can be applied, it can be used by public as well. And dance, as a form of aerobic exercise integrated with music, it brings, the enjoyment, the emotional happiness, and enhance the cognitive aspect also. Yeah, so really appreciate, like, Patrick mentioned about, and Charmaine also earlier mentioned about the involvement of the community sector, the professional artists. Yeah, so really feel that, we can work together and through research actually provide the scientific evidence that, the benefits of dance on the health. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vivien, for sharing. So we'll now open the floor for questions.
I was just wondering, because Edwin as well as Hasyimah was talking about budget and finance. If you're working with an artist, with an arts company, you are merely paying for one person, but asking volunteers to actually run the program. So how is that going to encourage future involvement of other artists to be involved in the in supporting the community arts?
Yeah, you really bring a very important point. Funding is forever an issue, right? Yeah. So for this pilot study, we managed to secure a small funding to support the research assistant and also the participant fee. So we are actually giving all the adults some cash to appreciate their participation into the program and of course their time. So even though it's a small amount, but they are very happy. Yeah, and they really appreciate the time and engagement with the students. Yeah, so we engaged a chief instructor, so we managed to pay her a sum of package using the grant money, and you could see that the extent of the research in terms of the kind of instruments we use to in order to do a holistic evaluation. So we know our local older adults population. You can see from the demographics, their education background are actually quite minimum for this generation. So in fact, our population mostly are no formal background or primary school educated. So in a way to do a survey for them really not easy, because you can't just expect like younger adults, I give you the question now, you fill in yourself. It cannot be delivered like that. So for our research assistant, they really sit down with the older adults to do in an interview manner to understand the perspective of the older adults. So for a set of questionnaire, they usually spend 1 good hour with the older adults. So the funding really used to support the manpower costs and the implementation of the program. Yeah, so really I can't answer your question about how we are going to engage artists and pay the artists for the engagement fee. In this case, we are fortunate that we partner with Center for Arts. Yeah, so I guess we have two good policy makers from our founding body. So probably they could. I mean, it's great that they share that there are possibilities, there are avenues we can apply. But what's important is that I guess work together. In collaboration, the community sectors, the artists, the researchers, and it would be great if we can at least generate some pilot results. And with these pilot results, when we apply for larger funding, it is more convincing. Yeah.
I think the way that AIC has been looking at it, also because I raised that point of if you train healthcare staff to do arts, then what does that mean, right? What's the intrinsic value? Does everyone then think that I'm a healthcare staff who's also a professional dancer? We know that's not the truth, but some people may think so. I think we kind of sort of tier it in a sense that we see artists as very creative beings. So we see you all as the originator of content. And I think very specifically in terms of the way that we've been doing the training for Everyday Waltzes, and a whole bunch of the other arts-based programs, we continue to get the artists back as the trainers because we believe that that's the pure and good stuff, right? And so in a sense, there's a slightly different viewpoint now. So the artist as creator is the content catalyst, and what we provide in the healthcare settings is opportunities to engage in a community so that an artist can continue to create, but with the community in mind. So nothing, in a sense, it's almost like nothing about me without me, right? So in a sense, we hope that creating that, sort of offering that community space for an artist to be invigorated by that community is one of the ways that we can contribute back to the arts. And then also from a purse standpoint, we get the artists back as trainers. Yeah, so I think in so doing, actually, it's also working very closely for the healthcare staff to work very closely with an artist and then try and repeat it and realize that actually they have different skills. That actually in itself, right, is an inherent undertaking to appreciate the arts. Because then, when you see it, it's very different, right? I can do that. But when you really do, actually, wow, I'm scary. I don't know how to do. So I think that's a really good sort of tension to have. So, I mean, I think that's, I don't think it's a perfect answer, but I think it's our attempt to make space and provide avenues for everyone. Thanks.
I think the one key point that can be teased out here is this idea of sustainability. And, and then I'll go back to the point that I made earlier about advocacy, because if we want to be sustainable, you need everyone on board. And that means advocacy. And in order to advocate, you need, again, the evidence. You need to go out there, continuously push the message. Yeah, so I'll just leave it at that.
Hi, just a quick question on the research that was done. There was mention about this, induced relaxation. Can you just share which part of the program that managed to get that?
Okay. The relaxation is more about a qualitative finding. So it was actually shared during the focus group discussion. So the elderly shared about their perspectives on how the dance program helped them to feel relaxed. So I guess it's more perhaps, the dance program integrated with nature, with traveling. So in a way, it is not just follow the steps, but it allows them to appreciate nature, appreciate traveling. So it brings enjoyment and relaxation for them.
Yeah, I think it's a good point to highlight, because that will be the difference between your quantitative and a qualitative, which you will never get that answer from a quantitative perspective. Yeah, thank you.
That's true. That's the art of qualitative research. Yeah, very much in-depth findings from the participants. Yeah.
Hello, just very curious. I would like to ask a question to my fellow artists with regards to empathy fatigue or compassion fatigue, right? I'm thinking about, when you, and especially Edwin for having more of a longer experience working with communities, and for Hasyimah, in this venture that you're doing. I'm thinking about, what are some of the things that you've been working in self-care, as much as you're caring for others. What are you doing as artists to also care for yourself so that you can continue this good work that you're doing?
I would think over the years, as I feel like if I enjoy myself, every session it's not, I am mindful of my practice being in, and then, being mindful of my responsibility if what I'm needed to contribute, to the circle. But to be very honest, it feeds me more than I feed them, to my practice, to my sanity as a dancer, like train for the stage, that can be pretty, violent, quote her. But going to the seniors, it's a very reflective experience. It's a very humbling. It's a very, you just put your whole heart out there, and you're just sincere in making the engagement and building that relationship with an individual. Not even to a whole group. And that whole time there you spend is very self-therapeutic for me. And I feel like that's one of the things that kept me going after, I don't count, but yeah, all those years.
Thank you for the question. It's really something that I've been thinking about a lot. And also, to be very honest, just kind of reframing back to Malay dance. I think the moment that I thought, when I learned that Malay dance was special to me, was when I did a full traditional Malay dance, and my father was so happy because he was like, finally you have more cloth on your body than normal. But also the fact that there was a sense of pride, there's a sense of connection, there was also a sense of acceptance that we belong to a community. And I think the more I think about it, just from my understanding of dance history, I think for Malay dance, we never really started on a stage or theatre. It actually belonged to the people, for the people. So there's also a kind of curiosity of like just the wheel sort of turning again and again, and how then like actually when we are communicating or connecting through a dance form that's already kind of vested with wisdom, with stories, with values, with ways of world building, philosophies. I think there was a curiosity for me to kind of like, can this then be a strategy for us to kind of connect with people, and also as the way of also saving yourself? Yeah. So I'm still pretty new, I would say, with the discourse, but I think there is an intrinsic motivation to kind of work on a methodology that is not precious to me, but it's also accessible to anybody and everybody that can identify or connect with Malay dance. And you don't have to be Malay to do that. So I think right now, the empathy fatigue is real. Therefore, I have my husband, Haizat, with me actually all the time. Through my process of kembali, returning in English, we are actually sort of having our sessions in the mosque, which can be quite triggering for me. So I have my husband with me as an emotional support. And many people don't know this, but actually it's not just the doing of the dance, it's the engaging with each and every individual in the space. I have Mak Lima. Mak Lima is very sweet. She's 80. She was upset with me for one session. Yeah, we were encouraging everybody to move, and she really wanted to move, but they did not have insurance for her. Yep. The center, they don't get insurance for elders. I think it was just their practice. They don't get insurance for above 70. So we have been briefed that she only danced on a chair. Yeah. So she wanted to lenggang all the way, but there was no way that she could do it, and she was very upset because she thought it's my decision. And so she didn't talk to me for the whole practice, but her expressions were very direct. And I sat down, I sort of hugged and kind of like cuddled and like really wanted to kind of connect. And I think the caregiver observed, and we were also finding ways, because it was not really about who's wrong or who's in control, but how do we then kind of give her a sense of what linggang is with the facilities that she has. And then it was a conversation between me and Haizat, and then figuring out what kind of resources or entry points within the workshop that she could probably lead, you know. So I think empathy is something that if for me, it was really me also being very vulnerable, and also letting my my collaborators know that, okay, I have a safe code, actually, to be very honest. Within the space, like if it's just too much, I cannot engage, right? I will usually just go to Haizat and like, okay, take over. Then I will take a walk and come back. Yeah, so I think this is something that is something that we need to kind of also normalize within the artistic creative process setting, where we do have that kind of empathy for each other and find ways to also communicate it, maybe through gestures, yeah, so that we are also kind of also taking care of each other in an ethical way.
We'll wrap up our discussion here, but obviously, you know, by all means, we should continue our conversations
And hopefully you'll come back for the sessions in the afternoon. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, the panelists.